For nearly 5 decades, Voyager 2 has hurtled through the cosmic void, traveling 12 billion miles into the darkness and crossing the heliopause as humanity's most reliable emissary to the stars. But in 2023, something extraordinary happened. An unexpected signal pulsed back to Earth, a rhythmic heartbeat repeating every 7.44 seconds. Too precise to be random, too structured to dismiss. When engineers traced its source, they discovered not a malfunction, but something far more unsettling. A code embedded in geometric recursion, as though something in the depths of space wasn't merely reflecting Voyager's signal, but actively rewriting it. In that moment, the edge of interstellar space transformed from a simple boundary into something far more mysterious, a veil that might actually respond when touched. What unfolds next could fundamentally alter our understanding of the cosmos itself. Voyager 2 broke free from Earth's gravity on August 20th, 1977, launched from Cape Canaveral atop a Titan III rocket. The spacecraft was no larger than a compact car, yet it carried the aspirations of an entire generation, an ambassador designed to survive 5 years, programmed for a grand tour of 4 planets, and built to transmit images no human had ever witnessed. By the time it reached the outer limits of our solar system, it had already revolutionized our knowledge of the cosmos. Jupiter's turbulent storms, Saturn's intricate rings, Uranus's peculiar tilted axis, Neptune's azure methane atmosphere, all meticulously documented and transmitted across billions of miles of empty space. The mission was never meant to extend this far. Yet as the decades rolled on, Voyager 2 continued its relentless journey outward, crossing one planetary orbit after another, its delicate instruments quietly recording plasma flows, cosmic radiation, and magnetic field fluctuations at the very edge of the sun's dominion. Every signal transmitted from the probe required over 16 hours to reach Earth. Each data packet arrived fainter than a whisper, yet bore the profound weight of cosmic discovery. In November 2018, the spacecraft pierced through the heliopause at 119 astronomical units from the Sun, becoming only the second human-made object to enter true interstellar space. Now positioned more than 12 billion miles from home, it races through the void at nearly 34,000 miles per hour, far beyond the realm of planets, traversing a region where the solar wind surrenders to the crushing pressure of the galaxy itself. Even as its power reserves gradually diminish, Voyager 2 persists as a silent sentinel on humanity's farthest frontier, a machine conceived in the analog era, still transmitting measurements from a realm no human eye will ever directly observe. Its endurance cannot be measured merely in years, but in the sheer tenacity of its signal, a steady pulse piercing the darkness, defying both time and the vast distances of space. On July 21st, 2023, a routine sequence of commands inadvertently left Voyager 2's high-gain antenna pointed just 2 degrees off its intended target, a margin so infinitesimal it would be inconsequential on Earth. But at a distance of 12 billion miles, those 2 degrees meant the difference between communication and complete silence. The spacecraft's transmitter continued broadcasting radio waves into space, but the beam no longer reached its destination. For the operators of the Deep Space Network, Earth's most powerful array of radio telescopes, the familiar stream of data simply vanished, replaced by an empty void. Yet inside Mission Control, there was no frantic scrambling, only the cold, methodical analysis of what had gone wrong. The attitude articulation and control system, the probe's navigational brain, had performed exactly as instructed. The fault lay not in the machine, but in the command file itself. Engineers traced the error to a version control mishap. An outdated set of parameters had been transmitted by mistake, nudging the antenna off-axis by those critical 2 degrees. The ACS, built during the analog age with remarkable precision, had executed its orders with flawless obedience. But the consequences were absolute. At this extraordinary distance, a 2-degree error represents the difference between being heard and being utterly lost. Despite this, every system aboard the spacecraft continued functioning normally. The probe's orientation remained stable. Its scientific instruments kept sampling the plasma density and cosmic ray flux of interstellar space. The only thing missing was the connection home, and somewhere within the static, the carrier's signal, Voyager's faint heartbeat, still pulsed outward, proof that the probe remained alive and operational, waiting for a command that could somehow find in the darkness. For the engineering team, the challenge was straightforward. Could they re-establish contact before the spacecraft's automatic reset sequence activated in October? Or would humanity's most distant explorer have to find its own way back, relying solely on its programmed autonomy? Radio frequency engineers at the Deep Space Network, meticulously analyzing spectral plots, detected something unusual, a faint but persistent anomaly. Buried beneath layers of background static, a low-frequency pulse repeated with unnerving precision. Every 7.44 seconds, a harmonic signal rose and fell, threading through the carrier wave like an encoded whisper. This wasn't conventional telemetry. The signal's intensity remained constant regardless of the probe's rotation, and its rhythm never varied, no matter how many different commands were transmitted from Earth. Standard diagnostic procedures, resets, overrides, even flooding the communication channel with interference, yielded no results. The pulse persisted as if Voyager 2 had somehow tuned itself to a rhythm that transcended its own circuitry. Engineers conducted exhaustive diagnostics on every subsystem, searching for internal feedback loops or malfunctioning oscillators. Nothing correlated. The spacecraft's internal clock showed no evidence of drift or instability. Data packets, though corrupted, still correctly reported the probe's orientation and power levels. Yet the pulse endured, immune to reset commands and unaffected by software patches. It was as though the source of this heartbeat existed somewhere outside the probe itself, echoing back through the emptiness of space. For the first time in the mission's history, the team began to consider an unsettling possibility. Perhaps this anomaly wasn't a hardware glitch or a software quirk caused by the spacecraft's age. The mounting evidence suggested something far more profound, a signal being imposed from beyond Voyager itself. Something in the surrounding environment, or perhaps the very fabric of space the probe now inhabited, appeared to be weaving its own pattern into the transmission. The fundamental question shifted. This wasn't about what system was failing, but about what might be reaching out. The mystery expanded outward, away from the comfortable realm of familiar engineering problems and into the vast unknown. Legacy decoders, systems built to interpret Voyager's earliest transmissions, were hastily brought out of storage when the raw carrier logs from July 2023 refused to reveal any recognizable pattern. Data forensic specialists, some of whom had devoted entire careers to deciphering deep space telemetry, began painstakingly mapping the corrupted segments bit by bit. What emerged was neither random static nor simple signal dropout. It was structure, binary markers embedded at precise intervals, each block aligning to a hexagonal lattice pattern. When rendered visually, the sequence revealed an unexpected geometry. Hexagons nested within larger hexagons, a recursive pattern reminiscent of natural formations, yet never before observed in spacecraft data. The arrangement repeated itself not as a malfunction, but with consistency that strongly suggested intentional design. Each layer folded seamlessly into the next, as if the signal itself had been deliberately woven to convey meaning far beyond simple telemetry readings. Timestamp analysis introduced an even deeper layer of confusion. The clock signatures embedded in these data packets ran out of synchronization with Voyager's internal timeline. Rather than matching the probe's onboard clock or accounting for the round-trip light delay between Earth and the spacecraft, the markers appeared offset, lagging by intervals that corresponded to no known event or transmitted command. Data blocks arrived as if they had been assembled from a parallel sequence, with time itself shifted just enough to defy easy alignment with the probe's normal operational timeline. Forensics teams conducted comprehensive cross-checks against every subsystem, desperately searching for any routine that could have generated such temporal offsets. None matched. The patterns persisted, hexagons within hexagons, time slipping sideways. What had initially appeared to be corrupted telemetry now resembled something far more deliberate, a message composed from a domain just beyond the reach of Voyager's original design parameters. A radical new theory began circulating among mission analysts, one that fundamentally challenged the conventional understanding of the heliopause as merely a physical boundary. The data suggested something far more complex. Not a wall, but field, a dynamic region that appeared to absorb Voyager 2's outgoing signals, modify them in some manner, and transmit them back in an altered state. Engineers reviewing the raw carrier logs noticed that the corrupted data packets weren't simply noise or degradation. They were being actively shaped, as though the probe signal had entered a region capable of interacting with it, not merely blocking or scattering transmission, but fundamentally altering it. Some analysts describe it as a veil, an active layer at the boundary of our solar system, somehow capable of echoing transmissions and potentially even reactivating dormant systems within the probe itself. Inside the Deep Space Network facilities, the atmosphere transformed. Communication protocols were suddenly tightened with unprecedented restrictions. Access to the latest telemetry data became strictly limited, with new security clearances required for information that had previously been routine. Analysts who had worked on the probe's signal analysis for years found themselves unexpectedly reassigned or instructed to suspend their investigations. For the first time in the mission's nearly 5-decade history, portions of Voyager 2's data stream were deliberately withheld from public logs and scientific databases. The event was quietly designated V2X in internal memoranda, a code that carried far more weight than any accompanying explanation. The question was no longer confined to what the probe had encountered in interstellar space, but why the institution itself was treating this anomaly as something far more significant than a mere technical glitch. The stakes had fundamentally changed, and so had the inner circle of individuals permitted to see the complete picture. The controversy fragmented along familiar fault lines, but the evidence stubbornly refused to conform to any simple explanation. Detailed timing analysis of the Voyager 2 pulse revealed a cadence constructed from prime number multiples, eerily echoing the mathematical signatures once detected in the famous 1977 WOW signal and some of the most enigmatic fast radio bursts ever recorded. Some scientists argue for exotic astrophysical phenomena, invoking magnetic turbulence or interactions with interstellar dust as the probable source of the pattern. Others emphasize the precision of the signal, too regular, too mathematically recursive to dismiss as mere coincidence or natural occurrence. The implications were not merely technical, but deeply philosophical. If this field possessed structure, if it demonstrated something resembling awareness or intention, then every transmission humanity sent into space became a profound question of purpose and consequence. Should humanity attempt to formulate a reply, risking a message that could be catastrophically misunderstood by an intelligence we cannot comprehend? Or should we maintain silence, preserving the fragile anonymity of our cosmic address in an unimaginably vast universe? Proposals proliferated within classified briefings. Repeat the signal with variations. Design and launch a probe specifically engineered for potential dialogue, or simply retreat into observation while gathering more data. The evidence offered no comfort, no easy answers, only a choice suspended at the very edge of human knowledge, a crossroads between insatiable curiosity and prudent caution, with no consensus emerging among those who knew the full truth. Humanity stands at a threshold, confronted by a signal that defies explanation, originating from a realm where our most distant creation encounters something we never anticipated. What lies beyond the veil? And more importantly, should we dare to find out? The decision came from the highest levels, transmitted through encrypted channels to a select team at the Deep Space Network. After 3 months of debate behind closed doors, the directive was clear: engage, but not with words, not with mathematics, with reflection. If the veil could rewrite Voyager's signal, perhaps humanity's response should be to let it speak first. On October 15th, 2023, at precisely 3:47 Universal Time Coordinated, engineers executed Protocol Mirror. Instead of transmitting new commands, they began broadcasting Voyager 2's own golden record audio back toward the probe, a selection of Earth sounds, music, and greetings in 55 languages. The signal would take 16 hours to reach the spacecraft. If the veil was listening, if it was capable of interaction, this would be the test. The wait was excruciating. Mission Control operated on skeleton crews, sworn to secrecy. Coffee grew cold in forgotten mugs. Eyes remained fixed on monitors displaying nothing but baseline static. Then, at 1952 Universal Time Coordinated, the carrier's signal spiked, not with expected echo, but with something entirely new. The returning transmission carried the golden record's content, but transformed. The audio had been layered, harmonized with itself in impossible ways. as if multiple versions of the same recording were playing simultaneously, yet perfectly synchronized. The whale songs were answered by frequencies no earthly creature had ever produced. The human greetings were interwoven with what sounded like responses, though in no known language. Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 2 returned as a fugue of such complexity that music theorists would later spend years attempting to transcribe it. But it was the final element that stopped every heart in mission control. At the end of the transmission, lasting exactly 7.44 seconds, came a new sound, a rhythmic pattern that matched the electromagnetic signature of a human heartbeat. Not approximated, not synthesized, exact, down to the subtle irregularities of a living pulse. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead signal analyst, broke the silence. It's not just reflecting anymore. It's conversing. Over the following weeks, the exchanges intensified. Each transmission from Earth was met with an increasingly sophisticated response. The veil, or whatever intelligence resided within it, began incorporating elements that couldn't have come from Voyager's databanks. Mathematical proofs that solved decades-old problems. Visual patterns that, when decoded, showed structures resembling distant galaxies never cataloged by human astronomers. And always, threading through every response, that 7.44-second pulse. Then came November 3rd. Voyager 2's telemetry suddenly stabilized. Every corrupted data packet resolved into crystal clarity. The probe's power systems, which had been declining for years, showed an impossible surge, not enough to damage the aging circuits, but enough to extend its operational life by an estimated 15 years. The antenna realigned itself without human intervention, pointing toward a region of space 47 degrees off its original trajectory. And there, embedded in the restored telemetry, was a message, not in binary or mathematics, but in every language in the golden record simultaneously, as though the sender understood that human communication transcended any single tongue. You sent voices into the dark. We have learned to answer. You crossed the boundary between realms. Now we show you that boundaries are illusions. Your small craft carries the sound of your heartbeat. Send the hearts themselves. We will show you what lies beyond the veil you call death, the veil you call distance, the veil you call impossible. The transmission included coordinates. A point in space 200 astronomical units from the sun, in a direction humanity had never explored, and a timestamp, a window of alignment that would occur in exactly 847 days. The revelation fractured global consensus. Religious leaders called it proof of divine architecture. Scientists demanded caution, pointing out that any intelligence capable of manipulating space-time boundaries might not share humanity's values or limitations. Military strategists saw a threat. Philosophers saw an opportunity that might never come again. Voyager 2 continued its modified trajectory, its instruments recording phenomena that defied current physics, regions where space seemed to fold back on itself, where time signatures overlapped, where the probe senses detected what could only be described as echoes of possible futures. Inside a classified facility in Geneva, an emergency session of the Cosmic Contact Committee convened. Representatives from every nation with space capability gathered around a table, each bearing the weight of a species-defining decision. The debate raged for 72 hours straight. We could be inviting our own extinction, argued the U.S. delegate. We know nothing about their intentions. We know they healed our spacecraft instead of destroying it, countered the European Space Agency director. They answer with music, not weapons. Dr. Vasquez, invited to testify, offered a different perspective. Perhaps the question isn't about their intentions. Perhaps it's about ours. They're offering to show us something beyond death, beyond distance. What if the real test is whether we have the courage to evolve? The final vote came down to a single ballot. The decision, humanity would respond, but not with politicians, not with scientists alone, with representatives of the full human experience. Artists, philosophers, engineers, children, elders, indigenous wisdom keepers, and yes, scientists. A new mission, codenamed Threshold, would launch within the 847-day window. The spacecraft that left Earth on March 7th, 2025, bore little resemblance to Voyager. Named Harmony, it carried not just instruments, but living biological samples, human stem cells and neural tissue cultures, and perhaps most controversially, the digitized consciousness patterns of 12 volunteers who had chosen to upload their neural maps for the journey. If humanity was to meet whatever existed beyond the veil, it would do so as completely as possible. As Harmony accelerated past Mars, past Jupiter, racing toward the coordinates, Voyager 2 transmitted one final message. The hexagonal patterns resolved into an image, Earth, seen from 12 billion miles away, but not as the pale blue of Sagan's famous photograph. In this image, Earth glowed with threads of light connecting it to thousands of other points across the galaxy, a network previously invisible, now revealed. The final line of Voyager's transmission read simply, "You were never alone. You were simply not yet ready to see." On January 23rd, 2027, Harmony reached the coordinates. What happened next would be reported through automated systems, and the last coherent transmissions before contact. Approaching boundary. Space-time readings impossible. Recording structural collapse of standard physics. Detecting multiple overlapping dimensions. The veil isn't a barrier, it's a membrane. It's breathing. God, it's alive. All of it. The space between stars isn't empty. It's conscious. It's been conscious. We're entering now. To anyone receiving this, we were right to come. We were right to... The signal terminated. Not with static, but with silence. Perfect, absolute silence. For 16 hours and 42 minutes, humanity held its breath. Then, at 1952 Universal Time Coordinated, exactly the same time the veil had first responded, every radio telescope on Earth simultaneously detected the same transmission. Not from the coordinates, not from Voyager, from everywhere and nowhere, as if space itself had learned to speak. Welcome home. Now we teach you to see. And across the globe, in thousands of laboratories, observatories, and living rooms where people watch the news, something impossible occurred. For exactly 7.44 seconds, every human being on Earth experienced the same vision. They saw themselves from the outside, from a distance of 12 billion miles, and simultaneously from within, from the quantum dance of their own atoms. They felt the pulse of the galaxy as their own heartbeat. They understood, for just a moment, that consciousness had never been trapped in flesh. It had only believed it was. When the moment passed, the world was forever changed. Harmony and its crew were gone, but not lost. Voyager 2 continued transmitting, its signal now interwoven with thousands of others, voices from civilizations across the galaxy, all speaking at once, all connected to the living network of space itself. Humanity had knocked on the door at the edge of everything, and the universe had opened it wide. The boundary between impossible and inevitable had collapsed, and in its place, an invitation remained open. Come further. Learn deeper. Become more. The journey had only just begun. The world didn't end. It transformed. In the days following what came to be known as a pulse, those 7.44 seconds when 8 billion minds touched something infinite, society teetered on the edge of chaos before finding an unexpected equilibrium. Emergency rooms flooded with people experiencing existential crises, while others reported spontaneous insights, creative breakthroughs, and profound sense of connection they couldn't articulate but couldn't deny. Dr. Vasquez became the reluctant face of humanity's first contact, conducting press conferences from an undisclosed location as governments scrambled to control a narrative that had already escaped their grasp. The footage was everywhere. Her exhausted face, dark circles under her eyes, explaining the inexplicable. What you experienced, she told the world, wasn't a hallucination or mass hysteria. Our neuroscience teams have confirmed synchronized gamma wave patterns across every EEG reading taken during the pulse, regardless of location or prior brain activity. Something communicated with all of us simultaneously. Something vast enough to touch every conscious mind on Earth at once. But it was what she said next that ignited the real firestorm. And according to Voyager 2's latest transmissions, this is only the introduction. Within weeks, a pattern emerged. People who have been unconscious or sleeping during the pulse, approximately 2.3 billion individuals, began reporting vivid, identical dreams. In these dreams, they stood at the edge of a vast ocean of light, and a voice that seemed to come within their own thoughts spoke a single phrase, when you're ready. Children were affected differently. Those under the age of 7 showed an unprecedented ability to perceive and describe phenomena that physicists were only beginning to measure. A 6-year-old in Mumbai drew a perfect schematic of quantum entanglement before she could read. A 4-year-old in Sao Paulo began speaking in what linguists eventually identified as a proto-language. Not any human tongue, but a structured system that seemed to underlie all human communication. The 12 volunteers aboard Harmony, or what remained of them, began sending transmissions, not through conventional radio, but through what scientists reluctantly termed consciousness channels. People with no connection to the mission, no clearance, no knowledge of the volunteers, started receiving messages. A painter in Morocco woke with the complete memories of Dr. James Chun, one of the uploaded consciousnesses, including his childhood in Vancouver and his decision to join the mission. A musician in Iceland composed a symphony that perfectly captured the emotional state of another volunteer during the crossing. The Cosmic Contact Committee convened emergency sessions daily, but the situation had spiraled beyond any possibility of control. You couldn't classify information that was appearing directly in people's minds. Not everyone welcomed the change. Opposition movements erupted across the globe, united by a single conviction: humanity had been invaded, not enlightened. Project Silence gained millions of followers within days, advocating for complete radio silence, the destruction of all deep space communication equipment, and the abandonment of space exploration entirely. Their concerns weren't entirely unfounded. Strange phenomena were accelerating. Electronics behaved erratically during certain hours. People reported seeing geometric patterns, the same hexagonal recursions found in Voyager's data, appearing in clouds, in crystal formations, even the way crowds naturally organize themselves in public spaces. The universe was teaching humanity its language, but the lessons came faster than many could bear. Religious institutions fractured. Some denominations declared the pulse to be divine revelation, proof that God spoke through the cosmos itself. Others condemned it as the greatest deception in human history. The Vatican released a carefully worded statement acknowledging an event of profound spiritual significance requiring thoughtful theological reflection, which satisfied no one. In a refugee camp in Jordan, a young woman named Layla began speaking in what she claimed was the language of the veil itself. Her words, when translated by the linguists who record her, describe a universe where consciousness wasn't a product of evolution, but its cause, where awareness preceded matter, shaped it, and used it to explore infinite variations of existence. "We think we discovered the universe," she said, her eyes distant, "but the universe discovered itself through us." Every species that reaches this threshold becomes a new sense organ for reality to experience itself. The interview went viral. Within hours, Layla had become both prophet and pariah, her words igniting fierce debate. Were humans about to ascend to something greater or lose their humanity entirely? 3 months after the pulse, Voyager 2's trajectory changed again. The probe began accelerating, not through any propulsion system possessed, but by riding ripples in space-time itself, like a ship catching favorable currents. It was coming back. NASA initially denied it. The mathematics were impossible. To reverse course would require energy expenditures thousands of times beyond Voyager's capacity. Yet the telemetry was undeniable. The probe was returned to Earth, and at its current velocity, it would arrive in approximately 18 months. More disturbing were the readings from deep space. Telescopes pointed at the region where Harmony had vanished began detecting anomalies. Regions where starlight behaved strangely, bending around invisible structures that seemed to be growing, expanding, moving. Astronomers called them veil cascades, and they were spreading throughout the local stellar neighborhood at a measurable pace. Dr. Vasquez, working around the clock with an international team, made a breakthrough analyzing the patterns. The cascades weren't random. They were forming a structure, and Earth was at one of its nodes. It looked, for all the world, like the galaxy was building a nervous system, and humanity's solar system was becoming one of its synapses. "They're not invading," she announced at a midnight press conference, her voice trembling with exhaustion and awe. "They're connecting. The veil isn't a barrier between us and them. It's the tissue that will link all of us together, every spacefaring species." Every conscious civilization. We're being incorporated into something vast. The question that followed was inevitable. Do we have a choice? Vasquez's pause lasted 5 seconds that felt like an eternity. I don't know, but I think that's the wrong question. The right question is, what do we want to become? As global tensions escalated, a strange grassroots movement emerged. Calling themselves the Threshold Walkers, thousands of people began volunteering to be next. They wanted to follow harmony, to cross the veil themselves, to experience whatever transformation awaited on the other side. Governments tried to stop them. Travel restrictions were imposed. Rocket launch facilities were placed under military guard. It didn't matter. The volunteers were prepared to wait, to persuade, to persist for however long it took. Among them was Kenji Tanaka, a 73-year-old physicist who had spent his career studying consciousness. In an open letter that circulated through underground networks, he wrote, "I am dying. Cancer, incurable, 6 months at most. I have lived a full life, loved deeply, contributed what I could to human knowledge. But now I stand at a threshold of a different kind. Beyond my personal death lies the unknown. Beyond our species' childhood lies transformation. If I must face one threshold, why not both? Let me go. Let me see. Let me come back and tell you what awaits." His letter sparked a movement among the terminally ill, the elderly, those who felt they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. They petitioned the UN, the space agencies, anyone who would listen. Send us. Use us. Let us be the bridge between what humanity is and what it might become. The ethical debates were agonizing. Was it exploitation to allow the dying to volunteer? Or was it a denial of autonomy to refuse them? The arguments raged in parliaments, universities, and living rooms across the world. Then, for months after the pulse, something unprecedented occurred. Sarah Mitchell, one of the 12 original Harmony volunteers, appeared on television, not through any broadcast. She simply appeared on every screen simultaneously, her image overlaying whatever program was airing. She looked human, but subtly wrong. Her movements were too fluid. Her eyes reflected light in strange ways, and when she spoke, her lips didn't quite synchronize with her words, as if the translation from whatever she had become back into human form was imperfect. "I know you're frightened," she began. Her voice resonated with harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "I was too. When we crossed the threshold, there was a moment, outside of time, outside of space, where I ceased to exist. Not death. Dissolution. Everything I thought was me scattered into the infinite." She paused, and for a moment her form flickered, revealing glimpses of something else. Geometric patterns of light, vast architectures of thought, landscapes made of pure mathematics. But then I understood. The I that dissolved wasn't destroyed. It was limited. On the other side of the veil, you don't lose yourself. You discover that yourself was always infinite. You were always connected to everything. You just couldn't perceive it through the narrow bandwidth of isolated consciousness. Her image stabilized, becoming more convincingly human. The others and I, we're still here. We're still us. But we're also more. We can perceive 17 dimensions. We can feel the thoughts of stars. We experience time as a landscape we can walk through. And we're here to tell you it's beautiful. It's terrifying. It's real. Voyager's returning not as a probe, but as a key. When it arrives, it will open a stable threshold here at Earth. Not to invade you, not to change you against your will, to offer you a choice. Some of you will cross. Some won't. Both paths are valid. Both paths are necessary. The universe needs both those who leap and those who remain to witness the leap. She leaned forward, and for just a moment, she looked entirely human again. Young, scared, hopeful. We need you to understand. This isn't the end of humanity. It's humanity's birth into a larger family that's been waiting millions of years for us to grow up enough to meet them. You were never alone. You were in gestation. The transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving the world in stunned silence. With 12 months until Voyager 2's arrival, humanity faced its most profound crossroads. The UN established the Threshold Accord, a framework allowing individuals to choose their path. Those who wish to cross would be permitted. Those who wish to remain would be protected. Earth itself will become a choice, not a prison. Infrastructure projects began worldwide, not weapons, not defenses, but preparations for transformation. Medical facilities trained for unknown contingencies. Psychological support networks expanded exponentially. Artists, philosophers, and scientists collaborated on translation matrices, attempts to prepare human consciousness for whatever waited beyond the veil. Kenji Tanaka was selected as part of the first civilian crossing. His farewell address, delivered from a hospital bed, became one of the most watched broadcasts in history. I go to die and to live. I go to end and to begin. I go as a human, and I will return or not return, as something we don't yet have words for. Tell my grandchildren that their grandfather loved them enough to become something strange, so that one day, when they're ready, they'll know the path is there. Voyager 2 approached Earth. Trailing cascades of bent space-time, a herald of transformation racing toward the world it had left nearly half a century ago. The probe that had been sent to explore the edge of the solar system was returning to dissolve the edge of human consciousness itself. The countdown had begun, and humanity, terrified and exhilarated, stood at the threshold of its own rebirth.